it's really powerful being here because you know, when we do this work trying to influence law and legislation and work through the power systems, you forget that the power from our terms, for meaningful engagement, is always on a spiritual basis. You know, to hear that each shell is living. And so if something is destroyed for whatever reason, for issues and conflict, then it can be assembled and put together and re-expressed because they're appreciated as living beings. You know, that assertion of sovereignty, you know, it doesn't translate. I don't think it can translate in relation to nation states that build their laws with these pieces of paper that are ultimately lined with so many other agendas rooted in domination, racial supremacy, and ultimately exploitation. You know, these are not forced negotiations that we're looking at here. They are assertions of the terms that we can understand, our people can relate back. You know, we write a law that says we got to clean up mines or whatever, but what does that mean to our people? You know, and this is familiar. This is a language that's a language of the earth and an extension of the sovereignty that we have, and that is the sovereignty that's also Mother Earth. Well, it doesn't matter if they understand it. It's an assertion, you know, and if they can respect and appreciate that, I think that's what it comes down to at different points it's had to. And maybe some people understand that because we're all, you know, we have heartbeats. We are all, you know, people who depend on clean air, clean water, and clean land to live. Nobody can live without that. So they have to understand these things because this is the language of the earth. It's the language of the creation of these, the assembly, is a language of the earth to assert the freedom, the autonomy, and the sovereignty of the people speaking for the earth. So they have to understand it because they're still part of the earth, whether or not they recognize it, their abusive relationship and the attempts to dominate, you know. So yeah, I mean, on one level, it doesn't matter if they understand it because it comes from the earth. On the other level, it is part of them. So ultimately, at some point, they'll come to terms with that. The Wampum Belts, you know, I don't know how many were respected and upheld because it's not my people where I come from, but the people who made it, the intention behind putting these together is because they were respected and put together through prayer and honored as living, you know, expression, a living language, articulation of the sovereignty, as I understand it, as it's been explained to me. So it was respected from the people who created it, and it's respected and recognized through the creator and creation, you know. But whether or not settler invaders respected that, I mean, we're in a museum that is housing these behind glass. This is not where they should be. You know, many of these are sacred objects. They're living beings, and they're put behind glass. You know, how would we like it if we just put one of our people, our elders, behind glass? They would suffocate. They'd suffer. You know, they're living. They have a life. And I'm sure there's appropriate things that need to be done, just like the corn pollen here. You know, it's strange to see it on display because that's not what its purpose is for. The basket, this basket that looks like it was made in Pakistan's, but that basket represents our universe and cosmology. You know, that basket also holds our mountain soil bundles. You know, represents the sacred mountains, the water, the land. And so our covenant with creation is established through that. Our identity is established through that. And we assert ourselves so people can understand it and either respect that or not, or relate to that or not. So it's on them if they don't respect it because they live with the consequences. They live with the consequences of global warming. They suffocate themselves. They think they can live without air, without land, or without water, so then they deprive themselves of that ultimately. So whether or not they respect it ultimately, it almost doesn't matter because if they don't respect it, it's the end. Treaty of 1868, was ultimately forced. After 4 years at an internment camp, what choice do you have? After scorched earth campaigns, destroying your homes, your livelihood, your lives with systematic targeting of men, women, and children and elders. I mean, we're talking about genocide. There's no other way to describe it. This is a whole population of people systematically targeted to be destroyed and subjugated. Or subjugated. And so that's what happened with the Long Walk. Our people realized we didn't have a choice. 8,000 people marched 400 miles to Fort Sumner, Huelde, a place of suffering. So what kind of treaty can come out of a place of suffering? It's under duress. There's no free, prior, and informed consent. It's hard to define sovereignty on those terms because it doesn't honor and respect our covenant with creation. So what we live in is still the impacts of that.